So I'm sure, like all of you here today, my story as a creative started when I was a kid. But my childhood was unconventional. My family moved a lot. We moved from Toronto to San Francisco to London to New York to Vancouver and all these smaller places in the middle, in between. And all of this was before I was 10 years old, which is a lot for a kid, a lot for a grown up. There was a lot of newness in my world back then. New homes and places, obviously, but also new people and experiences, cultures, accents, lots of new stories. And there was a high turnover of wonder and awe and delight. I've carried a lot of that, a lot of those feelings into my life as a grown-up. It's a really important part of my work as a creative as well. I have a story shop called Studio Telltale, and I call it a story shop because I tell stories across a variety of mediums. I write screenplays, I write fiction, and I have dipped in and out of journalism. And I also work with brands and help them tell their stories. On the brand side, I started my business as a copywriter. And then 3 or 4 years ago, one of the agencies that I partner with introduced me to the strategy side of brand development. And I was hooked immediately to that part where you start before writing, before design begins, building the worlds and figuring out what the stories are and how to best express them. And that work really lights me up. And like I mentioned earlier, it's really important to me to insert a sense of wonder and delight into my brand work. And not only because that's what I want to experience when I connect with the brand, but because feelings inspire action and loyalty, and they make a brand more memorable. And this is some of the work that I've done with beverage companies, hotel groups, a lot of real estate developments, restaurants, did I say restaurants? Furniture companies, and amongst others. That was an intro about me, but I'm here to tell you about a story project I did with a friend. It was a bit of a creative experiment to see how stories might impact a retail business. My friend Christina Florencio, who's sitting right here, used to own a vintage clothing store on Main Street called Revival, which is sadly not there anymore. But she's on to more exciting thing, or not more exciting things, but another exciting thing. And like Christina, I love vintage clothes, and I have since I was a teenager. And one of the reasons why I love them is because of all the stories that are inside of them. I don't know if you have thought that about vintage clothes, but think about the woman who might have worn a piece before me, or the moments a garment might have experienced before, say, this jacket found my body. Like a vintage purse. Can you imagine what conversations a vintage purse might have eavesdropped on? Or dance floors a dress might have twirled across. I really love that kind of stuff. So that was part of our experiment. The more time I spent in Christina's store, surrounded by all these stories and clothes, the more I got wrapped up in it. And we talked about doing something about it and seeing if anyone else might think about all these women. So what we did was we selected some garments around the store, and I imagined all these women and all these moments that these garments may have witnessed, and I wrote stories for them. Just short stories, handwritten on the backs of these hand tags that said, there's a story here. And we wanted to pick a good selection of clothes, like the sensational clothes that people are drawn to. For example, a long evening gown that had sequined tigers embroidered all down it, which clearly had a good time. But then also the pieces that you might not think had beautiful stories, like a pretty Liz Claiborne blouse from the 90s that seems quite plain when you look at it, but I'm sure had some wild nights in its time. I'm gonna share one of the stories with you. I'm gonna read it off my card because I've been told not to look at the screen. Okay. It was any other Tuesday. Drop kids off, sit at desk, pick kids up, make dinner, go to bed. At least that's what it was supposed to be. Life as a single mom. But on this particular Tuesday, a stranger at the crosswalk complimented her on her jacket. A piñata, he said, full of all things sweet. His blue eyes caught the sun, his dimples pulled her in, and she forgave his eye-roll line. They walked together for 3 blocks, talking without taking a breath, The bold stranger asked her out, as one did in a pre-app IRL world, and they are still on dessert. So this story was paired with this colorful, very pinata-like jacket. But when this sold, Christina found a vest that was equally colorful and pinata-like. And she did that for other garments that would sell. We would find another story to pair them with. And for one of the garments, I wanted to add an additional layer to the story. And the story was about a woman who couldn't go for a walk without picking up a stone or feather or shell, whatever it was, and putting it in her pocket. And so this skirt, I found a stone and I put it in its pocket. And the woman who ended up finding the stone was so charmed by it that she bought the skirt. So we didn't have any metrics that we wanted to hit or sales goals. This is Christina, by the way. But we did set some intentions and we had a why behind what we were doing. We really wanted to spread some delight and get people feeling and give them a moment of joy in their day, raise some goosebumps and see someone smile. Because vintage fashion is slow fashion, Christina also wanted people to slow down while they were going through her store. And we wanted to inspire some imaginations and get people thinking about where these clothes came from and who wore them and be memorable and unexpected and just explore how storytelling could impact people and how powerful it could be. We also did a salon where we read some of the stories to our guests, which was fun. And we were really pleased with what we found. We found that people did slow down and went around the store to look for more stories. And there were return visitors to the store and people bought garments. Of course, we couldn't measure whether they bought them because they loved the product or because of the story, but who cares? People told their friends and their friends came in, and social media, we saw movement. And then the biggest one was people were smiling when they read the stories and they shared that they enjoyed them, and we spread that delight. So that was really important to us and we achieved that. But this was a fun project between friends. There was no ROI. We had to pay attention to all of our it was all observations and anecdotal. But generally, in the business world, people make decisions and they measure their success based on data and KPIs and all those numbers that you pop into a spreadsheet and show your stakeholders. Look how good we're doing. And we didn't do that. And those numbers are super important, but they're not telling you everything. They're not telling you about the feelings. They're not telling you they're not telling you whether someone cared enough when they came across your brand to remember you. They might have clicked you, but they might not remember you. Data tells you that someone may have spent 49 seconds on your about page, but it doesn't tell you that person had a huge smile across their face the whole time, or tears streaming down, or bolts of electricity zipping through their bodies. So it doesn't tell you the whole picture. And feelings persist and they compound in the body. They're remembered. Data shows you what's happening. It shows you what has happened. It shows you results. It's a short-term view. It doesn't give you the whole story. And feelings persist. They last. When a brand leans into feelings, that brand is in it for the long term. And you're thinking about the long term and your longevity as a brand. And there's so much emphasis on now and short-term results and let's see something happen right now with what we're doing. And brands need to think beyond that. After all that data bashing, I do have some data for you. VML, which is a brand agency, did a survey a couple of years ago called The Age of Reenchantment. And they found some really cool things about humans and what we want from brands. And a really significant percentage of people surveyed want brands to wow them. They want to feel intense emotions when coming into contact with a brand. They want to be in places that spark their imagination. And then 49% of people said that they would be more likely to purchase from a brand that brings them joy, which is amazing. But the survey also found that only 70% said that they can't remember the last time a brand did anything that excited them, which is really sad. And it just shows that there's a huge opportunity for brands to differentiate themselves by leaning into feelings and emotion and delight and wonder. So I don't know if my childhood is what really left all these feelings of wonder and awe in my body. That's just maybe the story that I tell myself to make sense of it all. I think that we're all chasing wonder still. I think that we all want to be hit by those moments where we can experience childlike wonder again. The numbers tell us, right? If we want to lean into data. I just want to leave you with this and think about on your own brand or on your clients' brands, what can you do to inspire some people and evoke some delight? And it doesn't matter if you can't measure it, just make some people smile.